Hey guys, what is up? Lord Nick here, bringing you another League of Legends related video. In this video, guys, we are going over a kind of quick guide to Nautilus. It's been kind of a hot minute since I've done one of these guides. And something I wanted to kind of showcase you guys real quick is just kind of a quick guide to Nautilus. We're not really going into the full pathing of him. We will discuss it and I will showcase it here. But I do kind of just want to show off some of the tips of the build path with him, more so than anything else, because I think that is kind of the more integral aspect of him. So let's start off with like some of the key components you're going to end up going. So for the starters here, you're going to be starting off with Ember Knife. Usually there are occasions where you will go Hailblade, and in those occasions it is generally going to be against people like Hecarim or Udyr, or people who are just really good at running and you need to really make sure you can set up your hook. Hellblade sets up for that. If you're going to be skirmishing more, which my general rune path and build path generally allow me to skirmish more, I think Ember Knife is just a better one in most situations. So in most situations, you're going to go Ember Knife. You're also going to be going refillable pots as your first ones. Generally try to go out and do the stealth ward cheese, which would be, here, I can just teleport back and forth real quick, which would generally be trying to get the ward out here, dropping the ward, and then basing so that you're back before the minions spawn to get to your first camp. You come back here, you switch it over to this, and you'll be able to go and sweep not too long afterwards. So that's just a quick trick that you can do on any jungler, but on him, I specifically say it just so that you get an idea if they're trying to invade you early or not. Because your early jungle, while you are not weak in any real sense of the word, it is a little bit fidgety and temperamental because you're trying to use your abilities to clear your jungle. So if you have to stop to fight anybody to clear your abilities, it can really screw up your groove of what you want to do with him. Generally, pathing wise, my pathing generally lends me to going in whatever my bot side camps are. So if I'm starting red, I do red straight into my next camp. I start off with a level in W, and with this level in W, now note I have a little bit of increased stats because I am level 18 because I want to showcase some aspects of him later. But with these levels in W, you can generally with a nice leash be able to clear this pretty fast and pretty efficiently. You should never need to you should never need to smite your red camp. Save your smite for your Krugs if you're starting on red and you come down here, or for your Gromp, vice versa wise. On the blue side of it, I generally try to kite it into where I can smite onto my Gromp to start the leash on the camp, so that my last couple of autos with a W that I use to finish up my blue, I can use also to proc a little bit extra damage on Gromp as well. Otherwise, if you're going here to the Krugs, just do what I did there, where you start leashing the Krugs out. You also make sure to early smite them, and you just do a full on clear of the jungle. Bam, there you go. And then you're going to be moving up here. You're still going to be level 2 at this point, but you can finish your chickens and such, and usually the actual timer is a little bit sooner than this. I know, guys, I didn't start this on the exact timer, so you don't get to see the exact timer start, but I can usually generally finish this clear somewhere in the neighborhood of somewhere in the neighborhood of probably about 2 minutes or so. Then you usually have a hook. So here your pathing can change depending on what you need to do. You can look over here to your mid. If your mid's in a position to gank, try to do an opportunity gank. Otherwise, as soon as you've passed your big chicken to here, you can come here, and as soon as you hit this point, throw your Q out this way. This just moves you across just a little bit faster and saves you just a little bit time in your clear. Just a little quick little trick you can do with him to get you across faster. Something that a lot of Nautiluses and support do as well, just to kind of travel around the map a little faster, so you can use your hook, because it has a generally decently low cooldown base. You only want to use one shield and E to clear out these wolves. I know it will take a little bit longer to finish them, but by the time you move over here to your blue, you'll get your blue off, and with this, you can just go immediately into the blue, start kiting it this way towards the scuttle crabs, and you want to do a 5 camp clear, no matter the fact that you could do a leash of these two together. That is something that I have done multiple times, and in your second clears, generally I do that. The reason I don't do it here is just because it takes a little bit too much extra time, and you can't get to the crab on spawn. If you just do the blue, you can hit the crab almost directly on spawn. And note, you are pretty good at early dueling. At this point, you hit the next level, and at that point, you level up your E. You come back over here. You can look for a top gank before you do your Gromp, or a mid gank again. Generally, before doing whatever camp you have remaining, I generally finish this camp, and then I am actively looking for a gank. You know, if I got a gank off before, cool, but otherwise, I'm actively looking for a gank. If I cannot find one, I do actually start the pathing to my second side of the jungle again. And the reason I do this pathing, you know, so generally I'll path up around here. This is actually a little bit of bad pathing. I generally path back here to river, so it gives me the option of which lane I need to look for. But then I path through the lane. I will just make my presence known. I'll use some abilities to try to threaten people. I don't always go for a double scuttle, just because you will then be a little bit ineffective with your overall clear. I'll come through here, and I'll generally throw an E at the wave, so that it can help my mid laner push out, because this will just give them a good reset timer while I finish my bot side, so they'll be back up for the first dragon. And likewise, when you're doing this, you come down here, and you generally want to just go to this second Krugs off of spawn as soon as possible. You don't generally get down here as they're spawning, but you can get here pretty close to their spawn. Your clear is overall relatively fast. The E-buffs just allow you to be pretty good and pretty fast at this. Generally from this kill here, you'll move up to 5. You can then level up your E one more time. The second ability I level up here is not actually my Q. Overall, so like when you look at Q, its cooldown goes down by a little bit, and its damage goes up by a decent chunk. But the problem is your Q is generally really good against either single target camps or for fighting people for just straight up burst. And a big part of what I'm doing with Nautilus is more of the fact that you're just going to be using your auto attacks to be, you know, beasting on people. Because FYI, he has a really high base auto damage. His overall base auto damage is good, and then apply that with your passive to give you an extra bit of damage. On-hit Nautilus is actually nothing to sneeze at, nothing to sneer at. And I think just for solo queue, this particular build actually works out better because it makes your clear just faster by maxing out your W second. So of course, once you hit level 6, which wouldn't be off of these camps, you'd need either another gank to steal a little bit more XP, or you'd have to get a double crab, or something of that sort. You could be level 6. You can look for just a hover gank here, where you just kind of hovering in the lane, and then you get your back off, and then you go to your first items. I generally first item into a Tiamat. This clears up my next speed. My next clear speed goes a little bit stronger, and then my dueling power is actually really good. It sounds like a really weird item on him, I know. I've done other guides in the past where I consistently try to put Tiamat on champions that you might not think of Tiamat on, and in the case of Nautilus, nobody really thinks about buying this for him. But here are some of the reasons. One, that base attack damage being kind of high means that this 25 damage actually can go a decent way. On top of that, when you have used your full combo on Nautilus, there's one thing you are doing in the middle of those fights. You are autoing the crap out of people, and usually you're going to be repositioning backwards because you don't have the ability to go super aggressive. Here's the thing. Nautilus's kit is built around the concept that people cannot get away from you. That is the whole premise of what this champion is. His hook makes it so that you divvy the distance, you half the distance between you and them, which brings you forward and them back, makes it harder for them to get away. That's kind of the principle of the hook here. His auto from his passive says, okay, I've now gotten to you, you can't move from this spot. His E says, as you try to leave from me, the first wave will hit you. If you keep moving, you'll get hit by the second wave, and if you keep moving, you get hit by the third. Reapplying the slow and actually damaging them more. It actually hurts people as they are trying to leave the area. So everything about him is saying, try to leave and you're going to get killed. Depth Charge does the same thing. It follows them. It will knock up anybody that you bring it to as well. Anybody that gets in the way of the path of it or is at the edge of it, at the end of it with you. And then at the end, it will also stun and knock you up. It stuns and knocks them up for a second and also does the same exact thing to the person at the very end of it. And so there is a lot of utility in the fact that people can't get away from you. So building him more aggressively, building him with that aspect of, I am going to chase you and kill you, actually works very well to the design of his kit. So in the jungle, playing him more of an aggressive bruisery kind of fight you jungler actually works really well with this kit. You use this, you do your finish up your clears, and generally what I do is instead of finishing it, I go here and take these boots next. Now, as for boots that I've been doing a lot of lucidity boots, and I've tried messing around with ninja plated seal caps if need be, if they have a lot of early attack damage. The one I hadn't tried yet really has been Moby boots, but theoretically Moby boots are actually going to be one of the better ones for him, because that giant increase of your movement speed just makes your ganks that much more deadly. Everything about your kit makes you set up to be a really strong ganker as well, right? Like your hook gets you into the fight and pulls them back in. Like I said, that once you've gotten into the fight, it's really hard to get away from Nautilus. Also, FYI, when you're throwing out hooks to hook to walls and stuff to go through your jungle faster, it doesn't get rid of your mobility boost. So that's just a really nice pairing aspect of him that works really well together with these things. They also just make it easier to get into the lane without having to take like a predator rune or something of that sort, that nature. So it's a nice little cheese item to kind of do that, to do it. You don't see a lot of junglers taking Moby Boots because generally they're just not as stat efficient as the other ones. But seeing as you're not generally needing them immediately, you can try to rush them early. But, I mean, that kind of is up to you, how you feel stylistically. I've been leaning more towards the Lucidity Boots, to be honest, more than anything. Just a little bit of extra cooldown really goes a long way with him. Your E already has kind of a low cooldown, so just reducing its cooldown just a little bit more can help a little bit, and then giving a small cooldown reduction on your W helps some too. So cooldown reduction works really well with his kit overall, and then of course plated steel caps are just kind of a situational. If they have a lot of on-hit attack damage, then this might be the ones for you to go towards because it will just decrease their attack damage coming into you. So as for item efficiency and finishing, I generally finish up with a Sunfire into a Titanic. Yeah, I get it, guys. These are not items that you might associate to Nautilus. And then, like I said, I generally go Lucidity or Steel Caps. In this case, Lucidity. If I really end up needing the movement speed bump, I actually also sometimes will just go Swifties. Yes, you get a bigger boost from the Moby Boots, but the Swifties give you enough of a boost that you actually have a good chance of chasing people down with just this speed alone. And it's a permanent boost as well. After this, items become more situational, and I think with a lot of different champions, your items should always become more situational on your third item, just because you have a lot of different options of what you need to build, and the game changes so drastically game to game. If they have a lot of AD, relative to the type of AD, if it's not a lot of crit-oriented AD, so if it's a lot of like damage guys, and they're kind of fast, Dead Man is great. If they're just coming in at you and you need to play more of a peel opposed to a chase, Thornmail is better. Or Randuin's for that instance, which allows more slows, and if they have a lot of crits, it reduces the crits and reduces overall damage. If you're going to buy a Randuin's, third item slot is the only slot I recommend buying it at. Anytime after that, you lose a lot more of the core value to the item, because after you reach a certain level break point, which I believe is like, I think it's level 13, level 14, the item's value is not nearly as good as it once was, and its value is much higher in the early game. So maybe opting out of doing a TMAT if you just decide you don't like this fightery style. You could go into a more tank style and get an early Randuin's. Another great item is if they have a lot of magic damage dealers. Abyssal Mask is actually pretty good and actually surprisingly strong for you. And not even surprisingly, it's extremely strong for you because of the fact that everything in your kit immobilizes people, right? Your Q, your passive, and your ulti all immobilize. So this means you're just going to be doing more damage to them, and all of your teammates will do more damage to them. So this item is just really good, and if they don't have any magic damage, I mean, stats-wise, the item doesn't look as great. 400 HP is great, but the 60 MR doesn't do much. But it's still a really good item to go as well, so it's always a great consideration for third or fourth item as well. And then likewise, you're just going to be adjusting these afterwards. I don't generally go to Spirit Visage, even though you end up with a decent amount of potential Omnivamp from your Red Smite upgrades, and you can heal up off of camps and stuff, and then other people healing you is a possibility. You yourself don't have a lot of innate healing in your kit. And yes, it does increase your shielding, which it adds some great value back to you. But just the other MR items add more to what you want to do. The shielding is kind of a secondary nature now in this style of play, at least the way that I'm portraying how to play him in the jungle. It's more of a secondary nature. It's a nice added bonus to the fact that the other thing that it adds. So let's take a look at his actual kit and kind of break down what makes him actually so good at the jungle. One, his E is one of the first things we have to go over. It is an exploding Riptide is an exploding wave that goes out in 3 separate waves. If people are running away, they can get hit by all the waves, but as minions are coming in, they only really get hit by 1, maybe 2 of them. But it does 115 AoE damage and only has a 5-second cooldown. It also slows them, so it makes the camps a little easier to kite. This also does 150% damage to camps. This is a buff that they gave him a little while back. And if you do the shift here, you can see this ability deals 150% damage to jungle monsters. So this ability is your key bread and butter ability to clearing out monsters. It also has a good scaling base damages. So if we look at the stats on it here, the cooldown goes down by a decent portion. Going down by over a whole second is pretty good. So maxing it first means you're going to get off cooldown a lot more. Especially if you go Lucidity Boots, you'll see this instead of a 3.85, you'll see this at somewhere around the neighborhood of like a, I think it's like a 3. I think it's like, it goes down to like a 3.2 by the time that you have random wins and your boots. So third item, you'll see it go down astronomically. Mana cost barely goes up on the dang thing. Its base damages scales from 55 all the way to 175, so maxing this first means that you're going to get a giant increase in damage. Your slow also increases, so it's still versatility and usable in fights as it goes up. Meanwhile, your hook is a very useful ability, but its scaling aspect is not all that phenomenal. It does go down by 3 seconds, but it already is relatively a low cooldown. 10 seconds isn't that long, really, to wait for a hook, and then if you have CDR, it's going to bring it down even lower. So all in all, while this is not that bad of an ability to level up, its versatility in the jungle is not great. It's a really good ganking tool, so if you see yourself ganking more, opposed to doing the hard clearing like I do with this build, then you might find yourself leveling this more, but your E is still more beneficial because it helps you clear your jungle just that much faster. And then you come to his W. His W is the one that I have maxed second, and the reason why is it scales off of percentage health, and it goes up from 9% to 13%. So getting that up to its 13% means that all these HP items that I build is just going to make the shield that much better, which just means that it's more beneficial to build a lot of HP, and all the items I happen to build are just very HP heavy. They might not be a lot of the tank stats heavy, but they're very HP heavy. Your shield amount also has a base shield amount as well, which is really, really nice. And then it also has a bonus magic damage that it does. So the bigger the shield, the longer it lasts, the more magic damage you do per auto. And this is 30%, 30 magic damage per auto, 40, 50, 60 to 70. So at max rank with this and a Tiamat, or in a Titanic, you're doing a grand total of an extra like 130 damage, and then the cone itself does 130. So like on your actual autos, you're doing an extra 130 damage plus whatever bonus AD it's giving you, and then your AD is doing all this damages on auto. So your attacks deal 175 right now with just these 3 items, right? And that's including the extra 20 something coming from this. So you're doing a ton of damage with each auto. So you're just building stuff in your runes that allow you to auto more, and then it just stacks into this idea that you're just autoing people down. So instead of feeling like a useless tank that doesn't do anything during a fight other than applying one auto here or one auto there and being kind of sluggish and slow and being an engager, you have more versatility as a fighter to a degree by building this path, and it gives you more of a damage profile that you don't generally see with him. And then lastly, you have your ultimate. Your ultimate is the depth charge. Depth charge is that thing, like I said, it chases people down, it knocks them up. And of course, you want to max this by level 16. So 6, 11, and 16 levels that you want to get the ulti levels on. And I mean, you're just going to max it at that time, which means that you max your Q last. It's a great one, and once you get to level 2 of it, its cooldown drops pretty substantially by 20 seconds, and then with all the cooldown reduction that you have, you'll see it being about a 60-second ulti cooldown. And then, so like for full build, I would imagine this is what your full build is going to end up looking like. We'll sell the smite item just to show the items. You generally will have probably, let's say, a Dead Man's, and let's say you have an Abyssal Mask. And so this is generally what your full build is going to look like. You're going to end up doing a pretty decent amount of damage. And like I said, E first, then W, and your Q last. So let's get a dummy out here, and let's kind of showcase some of the damages that you can actually do with this, and some of the stuff you can actually apply with this. So if I hook, looky there. It's a pretty good amount of damage. Let's level up the dummy. Is there a way to level them up? I thought there was a way to make them like a level 18 dummy. It might just be over time that they gain levels. Anyhow, so he's a little bit tankier now. So let's hit him. Bam, 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 bam. I hit proc this, and look at that. You could just do so much damage to him. But let's just make him more of a tank, right? So his base resistances right now are nothing. So let's give him some legitimate resistances. Right, I think that gives him actual resistances. I can't honestly tell because this thing's in the way, but looks like he has some at least. Alright, that doesn't seem good enough. Alright, sorry guys, this thing is not super intuitive. Let's get him up to roughly 100. I really wish there was a way to move him so the minions aren't hitting him here, but... Alright, so he's just shy of 100. There we go. We're at 100, 100. So look at my damage on somebody with 100, 100. So this is still kind of like a squishy's profile of damage and health, right? Look at that. One full combo and 3 autos in, and a couple autos in, and he's already at over 3k damage. So if you can stick to a person in a fight, you just do a ton of damage to them. So let's reset all of my abilities real quick. Auto reset. Cooldowns. So 0 damage done. So Q. W. E. Ulti up. We've already done 1,400 damage to this guy. Most squishies are already at half, and now we just chase him down and kill him. This is the danger of this Nautilus build, right? Like, you're now seeing that this is, like, actually does a decent portion of damage. Now you're saying also, well, Nick, you're full build, so obviously it's going to happen, and that's theoretical damage against this dummy. And yeah, to a degree, that's, yeah, I'll give you that. This is showcasing the, like, end result that you can do. But throughout the game, the danger of you persists. So let's talk about the runes a little bit, because these might be also the last bit that a lot of people have issues with, because they're like, that doesn't seem like good runes. But to be honest, they're great runes in my opinion. I've really enjoyed what they do. But you have press the attack, because 3 autos is actually not that hard for you to hit. So let's see. 1 auto, 2 auto, 3 auto. Looky there, that's actually pretty fast auto attacks, and one of those locks them down. FYI, you can use your ability casts to chain auto animations. Looky there. I've locked them down for a good amount of time. So let's say I did it this way, auto, they're stunned, and then we get more autos in. Like, there's a good way to balance using your abilities to do some nice little tricks to get resets on autos. E auto, Q auto, W auto. So, like, you can get decent auto resets off of his core abilities. So, with that, you can chain them into the PTA pretty well, and then all of a sudden, you're just doing a lot of damage. You also just take alacrity, because you gain attack speed. So, overall, your runes should be press the attack, into Triumph, because Triumph's just really good, and if you're going to be fighting people early, it's just one of the more efficient runes in this part here, because it just gives you more gold for fighting. And then you move into Alacrity, because the extra attack speed is exceptionally good. You take Last Stand, because this just gives you a decent amount of burst, surprisingly, when you get really, really low. You could do Coup de Grace, so when people get low, you do more damage, but I just like Last Stand because there's situations where it's like, oh shoot, my upfront burst is out, and it's now the sustained damage, and as we get lower, all of a sudden, my W comes back up, and I just one-shot somebody. So there's just a lot of situations where you get low HP, you can use your shield to really benefit you. There's also an argument for doing Gargoyle Stone Plate and maybe a Sterix build. I haven't gotten to test all of the different builds with them, but I imagine those two would also just complement this style very well as well. If you wanted to keep it more bruisery than going the tank, you don't have to opt into all tank afterwards. I just feel like it synergizes with the playstyle a little bit better to go more tank, because then you're kind of a diver and more of a threat to the backline than anything. And then lastly, his secondaries, I go Future Market on pretty much every jungler. And while you could argue that Hex Flash is a better one because it gives you a lot of different ganking opportunities and routes and stuff like that, you don't really need them on Nautilus. Nautilus, while he's kind of straightforward, is also just kind of hard to get away from. Like, if I go in for a gank, it doesn't really matter if my lane doesn't have that much ganking assist, right? Because as long as I land this hook, as long as this hook can reach, which guess what? It has an obscene hitbox from very far away. You can then guarantee you're going to get an auto snare off of that, followed by an E to slow them. So even if they flash, they're slowed. And your laner generally can follow up on that enough to get kills. And so with that in mind, like, you don't really need to have Hex Flash to get these opportunities for oddball ganks. So just using the market is better because, one, you can hit your item spikes with a little bit less farming, right? Like an extra 100 gold can go a long way to help you get to your item spikes just a little bit sooner. On top of that, you could also just use it to get wards, to buy red wards to control vision a little bit better. Or, you know, the versatility of that you just always have an extra 200 in your pocket in case you need it. Right? Like, oh man, I could really use going for an elixir right now, but I really want to get this ruby stone, and I have, you know, 800 opposed to 900. Well, now you can get both. And so, you know, there's just versatility from the rune. And then Cosmic Insight is just, I think, one of the best runes for junglers. Item Haste is super good just because if you have something that has an active on it, so like Randuin's, it reduces cooldown by 10%, I think. So item is 10? Yeah. Item is 10, so that's like 9% cooldown reduction, and then 18% a spell haste, which is like somewhere in the neighborhood of like 14, I think, percent reduction. So like with those in general, you're looking at a good amount of reduction, and 14% spell reduction on your smite just means your smite's up more often than your opponent's. We're just going to smite down the dragon because it feels fun. Anyhow, hopefully you guys found this guide intuitive. If you guys have any questions about this guide, if you have any questions about other paths that you might be opportunistically taking on Nautilus, feel free to ask them. I have tested the other paths like Aftershock. I've tested the Predator stuff, and personally I've just found that PTA works best for what his kit offers and what he wants to do with it. And so I just recommend PTA the most because it fits to my playstyle, though you might find other ways to fit to your playstyle better, be it the more ganking oriented one of Predator or the more teamfight oriented one of Aftershock. So just, go ahead and try them out for yourselves. Alternative builds, you can skip the Tiamat guys if you really wanted to, and you can just go straight into a tank item right after you go for the Sunfire, and this is just going to make you harder to kill, and your playstyle fits that more of like a Zac or a good initiating tank. And he's actually pretty good at that too, and his wave clear is still pretty good because most of your wave clear is based off the base numbers of your E, and the fact that your W just turns on. Your skill order will probably still roughly be the same at that point. I think Q is still the one that you will max last, unless you are going for the gank heavy playstyle, and then that couple seconds off your Q might mean the difference in getting a really lockdown gank. But I just personally like my style a little bit better. If you guys had, like I said, any questions, ask them in the comments below, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next video, guys. And until then, have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye, guys.